Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vali Nasser, the Dean of Johns Hopkins University's School of Advanced International Studies. And today is my distinct pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Isabel de San Mayo de Alvarado, the Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Panama, to SAIS as part of our Development Roundtable. For over 70 years, SAIS has served as a platform for policymakers and students to engage on crucial issues shaping world events. Today's SAIS Development Roundtable, organized by our Tanvi Nagpal in partnership with Latin America Studies Program, who's represented here by Professor Riordan Roed, continues in that tradition of dialogue by bringing leaders and practitioners in international development to share their expertise with our students, faculty, and the broader community. Vice President Santamayo has over 20 years of experience in consulting development and implementation of public policies in Latin America. Following her election as Vice President and her appointment as Foreign Minister, she became the first woman to hold both positions in the history of her country. She worked for 15 years with the United Nations Development Program in Panama, where she helped create the framework for agreements that brought the Panama Canal back into Panamanian hands. She was the first person in Latin America to be awarded the Harry S. Truman Institute for Promotion of Peace Award, an honor she received in recognition of her work in preparing the meeting between the presidents of Cuba and the United States. Vice President San Mayo was distinguished by the World Economic Forum as a global leader on transparency and anti-corruption in the Global Agenda Council. She's also on the board of directors of many organizations, among them the BBVA Bank and Women Corporate Directors Association of Panama. Today, we are fortunate to learn from her years of experience in social policies devoted to eradicating poverty and inequality, and her work as a senior policymaker in promoting a national consensus on education, health, and gender equality. Please join me in welcoming Vice President Isabel de San Mayo de Alvarado to the podium. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Vali Nasser, Dean of Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, Dr. Tanvi Nagpal, Acting Director of International Development Program, Dr. Riordan Roed, Director of Latin American Studies Program, Ambassadors Emmanuel González Revilla, Ambassador of Panama to the United States, Ambassador Jesus Sierra, Ambassador of Panama to the OAS, dear students. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Actually, I was telling Professor Nasser upon arriving to the university that I once hoped of coming to SAIS and never did. So being here as a servant, public servant of my country, and having the honor of addressing you and sharing with you a little bit of what Panama is and what our contribution is or pretends to be in the global arena, it's quite an honor, and I truly value the invitation. I value very much as well the research efforts of an institution such as this, and ever more when you interact in the global arena and you are faced with issues of conflict and drought and the agenda of development, you find that data is of the essence in order to define public policy. Data is of the essence in the relationships between one country and another, and it is certainly institutions like this that devote to research, devote to analysis, that can provide that information that eventually ends up in the public policy formulation of countries or multilateral organizations. Recently, Panamanian nationals have had the opportunity of participating in SAIS. We have here Franklin Morales, who recently was part of your institution, and we were discussing the possibility of having more Panamanians have this opportunity, have this possibility, and I certainly think that is something that we should look into. Let me tell you a little bit more about my country. I come from a country that, even though we are small, we are about 4 million inhabitants. We have a privileged geographical position. We're in the middle of the Americas. We have forever been open to the world and have been able, I believe, successfully to take advantage in a positive way of that position and of our geography, what geography offers in order to serve the world. We are committed to human capital with roots from around the world that have created a very single population, I would say, with inputs from people from all over the world, and that makes Panama where we are as a country. Our economy is very diversified. We don't have any one sector of the economy represent more than 20% of our GDP. We are a country with a very particular situation in terms of our finances. We adopted over 100 years ago the dollar as our currency. We don't have a central bank. We work open to the world with the financial sector, interacting with the rest of the region and the rest of the world. And we have really done this ever since we became a republic over 100 years ago. Going back to our geographical position, we have an air hub. We have a maritime hub. We are a trade and financial hub. We have our canal that we have very successfully expanded a little bit over a year ago and serves the world in the maritime routes. It's working very well, and we take pride in what we have done as a country, managing our canal upon its transfer from the United States to Panama. This economic complexity explains recent data that shows that Panama is taking this growth to benefit our people, which is at the heart of our agenda as a government, at the heart of the agenda of President Varela, a country that is growing. We probably will grow the most in Latin America this year. We have grown steadily for the past 15 years, on an average of about 10%. And we are devoting this mostly to human capital. Our agenda is devoted to education, to water and sanitation. We're working with cash transfers to the most vulnerable population and have had positive results with that. We are working since last year with the development of a poverty multidimensional index with the support of Oxford University. And we are certain that these investments that we are doing will allow us to transit from a middle-income country to a developed country where all of our population have the opportunities that a developed country should provide to its population. We have been able, through this growth and these investments, for example, just to give you a few figures, to go from 30% poverty in 2010 to 21% poverty in 2017. This is 10 percentage points in 7 years. Unemployment is currently at 4.6%, one of the lowest in the world, with 4.9% at the United States, 6.5% Chile, 7% in Canada, and 8.5% in the European Union. In addition, Panama offers a great comparative advantage with a unique, as I mentioned, air connectivity that gives all of you the opportunity to fly directly from Panama to more than 90 cities in Latin America, Europe, the United States. Panama has one of the lowest inflation rates, 0.6 currently, and one of the highest and most stable investment ratings of the region, these rated by the most important rating agencies globally. This sustained scenario has made us attractive in the past 10 years to more than 145 multinational companies that have established in Panama their regional headquarters. You can find nowadays in Panama the regional headquarters of Procter & Gamble, Dell, Adidas, the same way that you find in Panama the regional headquarters to the United Nations. And this is mostly taking advantage of this geographical position that makes you places you close to different countries in the region, a country that is a warm country, that we welcome foreigners, that we open our arms, and that we make sure that our countries provides families and expatriates a very comfortable and a very, to feel at home, is the way we want to call it in Panama. This scenario was very different from the one I lived in when I was studying international relations, the same way that you are. I'm not going to say how many years ago. At the time, we were suffering from a dictatorship, the same way many Latin American countries suffered. At this time, we didn't have freedom, we didn't have democracy, we didn't have the economic development that we have nowadays. I didn't know at the time, when I was a student in a university here in the United States, that I would have the opportunity to serve my country and have such an honor as the one I have today of serving as Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs. I only knew that I wanted to work on public service. I wasn't sure if it should be from my country, an international organization, an NGO, a citizen that participates. I knew that public issues were what had my attention, and I am sure that many of you have that calling, because if you assist these universities, probably because you have that calling. So I want to encourage you to prepare yourself the best that you can, because the world is currently facing challenges that are growing, and we are depending on, and we should depend on young people like you to prepare yourselves and take the stand and make the changes and continue the work that we have begun, but where we have still many, many challenges. The opportunity of working in an international organization such as UNDP allowed me to participate in consensus building and dialogue processes. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I really believe we need more of that nowadays. I really believe that is the key to the solution of many of our problems: dialogue and understanding, the ability of peoples, governments, organizations to sit around one table, discuss issues, recognize when we have differences, and when we do not agree on things. It's fine to agree to disagree. That's acceptable. But the world cannot overcome the challenges that we face today unless we are able to sit around a table, discuss the issues, face them, and find solutions together. And I truly believe that has been one of the key things for Panama, that has allowed us to have the successes that we have had as a country and to find ourselves where we are today. When we recovered our democracy at the beginning of the 1990s, our country was really polarized. We had families divided. We had a whole country divided because of the fracture that the dictatorship had represented. And at the time, the president that ruled in this new democratic period, I think he paid a lot of attention in healing wounds, and he paid a lot of attention to defining a national agenda to ensure that all Panamanians, all political parties, civil societies worked on one national agenda. And he called upon UNDP to convene this dialogue process. And then, in the 1990s, Panama agreed on the first ever national agenda that said, these are our issues where we all need to agree on. We can disagree on everything, but we cannot disagree on the main challenges that we faced as a nation. I think that was very important, and that led to the second dialogue process that I had the honor to participate in, which was a consensus building process that provided Panama with the legal framework to receive the Panama Canal. And now that we have the canal and it works well, maybe this is not so evident to us as Panamanians. But at the time, we didn't have the legal framework to receive this monumental institution that worked very different from the rest of our public institutions. And we wanted to make sure that upon receiving the Panama Canal, it was, and there was a word that I don't recall, it was the users did not feel the transfer. You know, it was a transfer.
Serious.
Thank you. It was a transfer that, you know, it happened and you just felt you were having the same service, and we were able to do that. And we were very proud of that as Panamanians, but it took us to get there. It took us to sit in about a year and a half around a table, all political parties, and private sector, labor institutions, NGOs, and define things that were very hard to define, such as the Panama Canal does not have the right to strike. The workers of the Panama Canal do not have the right to strike, which is a basic right. But there was an agreement, there was a national agreement that that was more important. And it has worked for us. So I have wanted to share with you a little bit of this, because I think globally, when we will face more and more issues as the scarcity of water, issues as conflicts risen by migrants, by refugees, we must be able to talk about the solution to these problems. Because if we each pull to our own corner, it's just not going to get us anywhere in the long term. And I am happy to say, as foreign minister, that I believe this is the way the world is going. In general, with some countries at some points in time taking a different view, because that's part of democracy. It's part of democracy to have governments change positions. That's part of democracy, and that's fine. But in general, there is a framework. We have now a 2030 agenda that establishes clearly the Sustainable Development Goals and what are the challenges that we face as in the global arena, and that we all must work towards. And we have the Paris Agreement, and we have many other frameworks. And it is fine to agree to disagree, as long as we are able to sit around that table and discuss the issues, and more than that, discuss the solutions to those issues. I think this is one of the things that Panama has to offer. The fact that we are a small country in the middle of the Americas, that we emerged over 3 million years ago to unite the Americas and to unite these two land masses, and that we were, in the times of the fairs, the transit through Panama was the way to go from one coast to the other. And then you had the rush, the gold rush in California, and you would go through Panama to go from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And then we had the first railroad in the Americas to connect the two oceans. And then we had the canal. Has made us a country open to the world and with the ability to connect and the ability to promote understanding. And I want to believe that in our very small way, in our very humble way, we are able to provide that still. And I think that's what Panama provided when we were able, during the hosting of the Summit of the Americas almost 3 years ago, to provide the scenario for Cuba and the United States to have a meeting for the first time in 50 years. It was the neutral arena of a country that can connect to different countries, a country that can speak to different ideologies, that was able to provide that. And I am sure that when institutions like SAIS train people with a broader frame of mind about the world and about the challenges of the world, this is what you're building and this is what you are constructing. In terms of our foreign relations, we have made a pillar of our foreign relations, the promotion of dialogue and understanding. We have worked at that. We have also worked hard at the development agenda, thinking that we can, once again, in our small way, as a small nation that we are, contribute to the international dialogue on the development agenda. We have established last year diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. We were maybe one of the last countries in the region to establish relations with the People's Republic of China, and thus recognizing the One China policy. China is definitely growing its presence worldly with their One Belt, One Road policy. And I think it's part of the international arena and the international agenda to continue promoting understanding amongst differences. And Panama, we take pride in being a democracy, and we take pride in respecting human rights, and we take pride in respecting freedom of speech. And the government of China has a different approach, and that doesn't mean that establishing relations will change our approach. It's just a fact that different situations provide for different scenarios, and we are sure that for Panama, being an open economy, being a country that promotes dialogue and understanding, it was already important for us as well to establish diplomatic relations with a country whose presence in the world is undeniable. As mentioned, the Sustainable Development Agenda is at the core of President Varela's government plan. We have regarding the Sustainable Development Goals, not only have they guided the definition of our government plan, but understanding once again the importance of dialogue processes and consensus building, we have been able to define a national agenda with the participation of all political parties and the productive sectors and civil society, whereby these participants have agreed that the Sustainable Development Goals are the guidelines for the Panamanian development in the following years. And I think this is very important because, once again, democracy provides for the possibility of changes in government. But we must work towards specific goals in a sustained manner. And we cannot have every 5 years drastic shifts on our national priorities, because that's not the best way to ensure sustainable advances. In this regard, aligning the agenda with the participation of the productive sectors, of civil society, we believe is key, and it's central to the way Panama has approached our development processes in the past 25 years within democracy. We're also committed to ensuring that our geographical position represents advantages, not only to Panama, but to our region. We also understand that the growth that our country is having means that we have a responsibility towards our region and towards the development of our region. And we are working, for example, the same way that we have many United Nations agencies have their regional headquarters in Panama at a cost to the Panamanian government. We are building a humanitarian hub for rapid response to disasters in Panama. This will be inaugurated in the following months at a cost of almost $15 million to the Panamanian government. And we are placing this humanitarian hub to the service of the Latin American region and the Caribbean. And this is an idea that was born after the disaster in Haiti, the earthquake in Haiti. President Varela was at the time Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs. And just by the position of our country and the logistical platform that we have with our ports, our airports, response to Haiti happened through Panama. So now we are working on this humanitarian hub which will host the Red Cross, the World Food Program, the other international organizations designed to respond to disasters, in order for us to place our geographical position at the service of the region in the case of disasters. And we all are aware of the increase of disasters to the region as a result of climate change and others, and the vulnerability as well of the islands, particularly in the Caribbean. We have seen in the past months and years what this has brought to the region. In terms of our agenda, our development agenda, we are also placing important attention to Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender, understanding that gender parity is not only an issue of rights for women, and it's not only an issue of justice for women, it's definitely an issue of development. It's very simple. If we devote half of the population to work on development, we will just not make it as fast. We need to devote 100% of the population. And this means that women need to have the same opportunities and the same participation as men in order for us to contribute to development the same way that men are able to do. And this means many things. This means that at the family level, men and women need to share responsibilities at home the same way, because that's one of the things that prevents participation. This means that we need to confront violence, which is still an issue, definitely in my country, definitely in the region, and definitely prevents the possibilities of growth and participation for women. And we need to ensure that we include champions on gender participation that are men and women. This needs to stop being an issue of women for women. This needs to start being an issue of men and women for society, men and women for development, or else it's just going to take us double the time. The other issue that has been at the core of our government agenda, and that I truly believe can represent the before and after for Panama, is our commitment to transparency and the fight against corruption. Enough of our countries having to share the burden of money that is needed for development and for our populations, and have it go to the pockets of a few people. Enough of our countries having all these amounts of resources go to corruption. President Varela's commitment to the fight against corruption has been unequivocal. He appointed an independent attorney general. We are bringing to justice, for the first time ever in my country, people very high level that have been involved in corruption scandals. We have a former president in jail in the United States. This is not something that we're proud of. It's just a reality. And already more than $500 million have been recuperated in Panama of money that had gone to corruption and corrupt practices. The way we have addressed this issue of corruption has been a different way from some other countries in the region. And we hope that this approach, we are able to share it. It can even be a case study. We truly believe it should be a case study, because we need to make the fight against corruption a popular fight. We cannot make the fight against corruption a fight that will cost the innocent their job, their hospital, their school that is being built. And in some countries in Latin America, and we have had in the past years, particularly one company, but not only one company, that, I mean, their business was to promote corruption in the region. That was their business, and they were very good at it. Some countries have addressed this in a way of halting all public works being executed by these companies. And you know, it's not easy to have companies that have the experience and have the capacity and are able to win public bids and execute the job and do it well, particularly in small countries. So once you go and fight corruption, wanting to close the doors to these companies and thus closing the projects that they are working at, what does that mean? That means that you have hospitals not finished, you have schools not finished. The head of the United Nations Commission on Economic Development told me a couple of years ago that the way Brazil had approached the fight against corruption had cost Brazil 3 points of their GDP. 3 points. Some other countries have approached it the same way. The way we have done it, and the president has insisted on this, and this has not been necessarily popular with everybody. The justice system needs to deal with these companies and needs to do justice. But the executive branch needs to do what we were elected to do, which is provide for the public works, provide for the projects that are ongoing and that we committed to doing. And the way it happens in the United States, a company commits fraud, they need to face justice. They need to pay the how do you call this? La multa, the fine. But that doesn't mean they need to go out of business. And that doesn't mean you need to close down their operations. This is the way we have approached the fight against corruption in Panama, and we believe it's working for us. Our economy is growing, the projects are being completed, the companies are there, are being fined, are facing justice, their executives are facing justice, but we have separated the two issues, understanding that we have a responsibility to the people, which is to provide for what it is our job to provide for. Let me talk a little bit about Latin America and what I see as the challenges for Latin America in terms of foreign affairs. I already mentioned in the decade of the 1980, 40 years ago, we were immersed in dictatorships, armed forces, poverty. Since that time, many things have changed. The quality of life of citizens in general in Latin America has definitely improved. And we have found democracy for most countries. We are seeing some setbacks that should call our attention. Just a few months ago, the electoral process in Honduras was not so clear. That is something that we should pay attention to. We need to continue to ensure and work to ensure that our electoral processes work well. However, we also need to work to ensure that democracy is not only electoral processes. Democracy is not only ensuring that every 4 or every 5 years the most voted president gets elected. Democracy means responding to the needs of the people, providing opportunities, providing for human capital. And this is, I think, the new phase for Latin America. This is where the challenges still lay ahead. Of course, we still have some issues with electoral processes, and I'll talk a little bit about Venezuela. But in general, for most countries where we do have democracies well installed, we still have the challenge of overcoming poverty. We still have the challenge of overcoming inequality, and that is not acceptable in a country, in a region that is growing. That is not acceptable in a region where we have the resources. So that is, I think, the next challenge for Latin America. And, you know, we are the next door neighbors to the United States. The United States has historically had a close relationship with Latin America, and we think this is important, and we think we need to continue to nurture that relationship. We are on the same, we share the same continent, and the same way that drug trafficking affects my country, even though we are not a drug producing country, but we are the transit country, drug that we don't confiscate ends up in the United States. So we do have the same challenges, and migrants that cannot enter the United States might go to Panama, and and at the end, we face the same challenges. Some of us in a larger way or in a smaller way, but we do face the same challenges. So the work that we can do together as countries that share the same continent in order to face the democratic challenges, to face the development challenges, I think is very important. We have, in a couple of months, the new Summit of the Americas that took place in Panama almost 3 years ago, where that historical meeting between President Obama and President Castro took place. We don't know what's going to happen in the Summit of the Americas. Peru is hosting the Summit of the Americas and has said that they will not invite Venezuela. We are part of the Lima group, and we agreed to respect the host's decision to invite or not to invite Venezuela. However, as I mentioned, that dialogue is one of the things that Panama promotes, and we understand is one of the most important tools that we have in terms of diplomacy and in terms of understanding. We are not so sure that it's best not to have Venezuela sitting around the table. We thought it was actually best to have Venezuela sitting around the table, but we respect Peru's decision. The question is, what's going to happen? Are we going to have half of the participants of the Summit of the Americas not go? Because if Venezuela doesn't go, it's not Venezuela that's not going to go. It's all of ALBA that's not going to go. So we're going to have a discussion among half of the countries of the Summit of the Americas. Is this what the region needs? I'm not so sure. When we have an OAS that has weakened, when we have CELAC that is completely divided also and is not even able to meet because we cannot agree on who the next president of CELAC will be. We were supposed to have a meeting with the European Union at the level of heads of state a few months ago, and we haven't been able even to agree on having the meeting. This is not good. So I do believe that we need to work closer, all of the Americas, including the United States, in order to ensure that we are sitting around the table and discussing our issues and discussing our problems, because I am not so sure that by not talking to each other we're going to solve it. I understand that the dialogue efforts in Venezuela have failed. I understand that. And I understand that even the dialogue efforts in Venezuela have been used by the regime to have some air and extend the possibility of a solution. So I understand that. But then again, what are our choices? What are our choices? What are the people of Venezuela's choices? That's what we need to think. It's easy to think what's popular to do. It's popular to exclude Venezuela. It's popular not to invite them. It's popular to close the door. It's popular to have financial thank you again. And that's necessary as well. We need to continue to put pressure on the regime. I'm not saying no. I'm saying we really need to try to think outside the box and what are the possibilities, because we have a country there where people are starving and people do not have medicine, and they're fleeing to Colombia, Brazil, Panama, and it's not a problem of Venezuela. I think it's a problem for the region. Panama, as I mentioned, is part of the Lima group. We are discussing periodically to discuss the possibilities to Venezuela. We remain concerned and ready to support in any way that we can, but still haven't found a solution yet. In terms of the electoral scenario, 2018 is an important year for the region. We have voters that will elect leaders in 2018 for Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, hopefully Venezuela, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. Once again, I truly believe we need to transit from an electoral democracy to a democracy that ensures better days for all of our citizens, and that is where our challenges lie. I want to leave you with the thought in mind that in this process, in the development challenges that we face in the region, in the political challenges that we face in the region, Panama is an ally, and Panama is a trusted ally. We are a country with the same values. We share the same values that the United States shares, and many other countries in Latin America, the values of human rights, the values of democracy, the values of improving the livelihoods of our citizens. And once again, the Latin American region is a next-door neighbor to the United States, and it is important to continue to work together in terms of foreign policy to address these challenges that we share. I understand that other regions maybe have more conflict, and it is natural and normal to look at regions where there is more conflict, but we must not undermine the issue of drug trafficking and what that can represent to us in terms of our security and in terms of the future for our generations. And we must not undermine the role of Latin America in this fight. We are a diverse, small country hoping to provide for connection to the world. We continue to see our country as one of service to the world, as our coat of arms established, Pro Mundi Beneficio, or as we have called ourselves recently, the Great Connections. As students, I invite you to look to Latin America, to try to understand the region, and to see that the closer we work, the better for all of us. Thank you very much. Should I stay here? Okay.
And we'll open it up to about 5 questions for Q&A if the Vice President is willing. So please just raise your hand and we'll give you a microphone. Yeah.
We're not calling it anyone, so whoever
Is it on?
tell us where it is.
Hello, thank you very much and welcome to university. I have a question.
Should I answer me? Thanks for your question. As mentioned, Panama has been a country open to migrants forever. Historically, we had not had many Venezuelans come to Panama. We, as a nation, have been used to have Colombian migrants, Nicaraguan migrants, people from the Caribbean that came to Panama to build the canal, even Chinese that came to Panama to build the canal, but not Venezuelans. In the past 10 years, we have seen about 100,000 Venezuelans established and make Panama their residence. This is a large number for a country of 4 million people. We have hosted them. We have given them work permit. They have contributed to our country, to our economy. We have supported them, and we will continue to do so. We were faced with a situation last year of placing the requisite of a visa to enter Panama. We had no visa requirement for Venezuelans before, but at a point in time, we were receiving 10,000 Venezuelans per week. And our public services and the size of our country, we just cannot handle 10,000 new immigrants per week. So we placed visa. We now require visa. We are giving, if I am not mistaken, 1,000 visas per month. That's not little. We will always be ready to support friendly neighbor countries on difficult situations like Venezuela is. But we understand that we need to work on a long-term solution to find a better livelihood for the people of Venezuela within Venezuela. We are very concerned of the massive exodus that the situation is providing.
Hi, Madam Vice President. My name is Carlos. I am a Panamanian citizen. I'm also a student here at SAIS under the Latin American Studies program under Professor Roed, and I work here at the American Foreign Policy Department. We're thrilled to have you here. My question is about China. Given the fact that every operational foreign policy document that's coming out of the White House, the National Security Strategy, National Defense Strategy, they all seem to point that China is sort of a threat, kind of like the national interest of this United States not to see a strong China militarily, economically. And given the fact that we're looking as a nation to be the sort of the tip of the spear of China's presence, as we should in Latin America, I was wondering, what do you think, how do you assess Panamanian foreign policy looking ahead and this, try to navigate this multi-dimensional process that is taking place in the international order? In other words, what's a grand strategy that you would like to see for the next 5 to 10 years going forward, given the fact that you're entering last year of your administration? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and I hope that upon graduation to SAIS, you are interested in applying for the Panamanian Foreign Service.
I used to work
Well, you used to, can come back. Our country needs our talents in order to continue, so thank you. Once we signed diplomatic relations with China, we realized that, yes, we had 2 years at the time to go, which can be a long time and can be a very short time as well, and that China is a huge country. We are a very small country. We wanted to make sure to design a roadmap where we were somehow able to guide that relationship towards Panama's interest, understanding that each country will look for their own interest in a relationship the way it should, and that we needed to prepare ourselves in order to face this very large, very powerful country that we were establishing relationships with. So we designed a 12 points agenda, which is public, and states the priorities for Panama with the relationship, the newly established relationship with China. These are the 12 points that we have been working on in the past months, ever since signing the diplomatic relations. When President Varela visited China a couple of months ago, the almost 20 agreements that we signed with China, memorandums of understandings, agreements, etc., revolved around those 12 issues. And we have defined a roadmap that we hope will guide the foreign policy of Panama with China for the next decade, 15 years, 20 years. I understand, and I have heard about the concern because of China's presence in the region. And I understand. Once again, the approach of China to certain things is different from our approach, and is certainly different from the United States approach. And we need to be strong enough to defend our views and our policies, which are our own, and China's is theirs. But that doesn't mean that we cannot, in a mature and responsible way, enter into a relationship and work towards the benefit of both countries, the way I think we are doing. And I would say that the response to China's growing presence in the region is the US's presence in the region. Countries have challenges and countries have issues, and they look for allies, and and participations and companies in order to overcome those issues. And it's legitimate for countries to work towards your own interest. And definitely the fact that China has increased amount of resources that are being placed to the issues of development, it's an issue in terms of foreign policy globally. And the answer is not to ignore the elephant in the room. The approach, I think, should be to take note of the elephant in the room and work in that regard, which is what Panama is doing.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Hello, my name is Juan. I'm from Guatemala, but I lived in Panama for about 8 years, and I have to tell you, I really loved it. Thank you for your service. I really admire what Panama has been doing to stamp out corruption in their own right, but however, my own country is having a hard time dealing with CICIG and the mandate that they're trying to establish as the government's trying to resist it. My question for you is specifically what you think Panama's role in stamping out corruption in the region is, what their stance on CICIG is, and if you think UN bodies such as those can help the region clean up its corruption problem.
How long do I have to answer that question? Thank you for your message on Panama. First of all, regarding what the Commission represents for Guatemala, we believe that is for Guatemala to decide. I would not offer a position in that regard. I think each country deals with their issues the way they choose to, and I am aware of the conflicts within Guatemala, and I really wish Guatemala the best on these challenges. I truly believe on multilateral organizations support to development issues. There have been some efforts globally, like the Commission's, not very few. For my country, I am very happy that we're dealing with this within our country. For Panama, I think these issues need to be addressed by our nationals. We have our weaknesses in terms of our justice system. We have our weaknesses for our executive branch, for our legislative branch. And I think we need to continue working to overcome those challenges. I would not support for my country to go outside my country to look for solutions for these sort of issues that I truly believe need to be solved within. However, each country has their own reality. I cannot say for Guatemala if that was a correct decision or not. I can just hope that Guatemala will continue on its path. I know it is being difficult. It is being an everyday issue. And what role can Panama play? That's why we want to have our experience shared, because our approach has been different, and we believe it has worked, and we believe it should be studied. And we think it can provide, let's not say an example, let's just say an experience to other countries that might work in other countries, it might not. Each country needs to find their own way, and each scenario is different. The enormous amount of information on corruption that is coming out of Latin America in the past years, on the one hand, is sad, but on the other hand, maybe that's what we needed to happen in order for us to clean our act. And perhaps we are just going through the pains, the growing pains of identifying the problem and working towards the solution. Maybe before all of this was happening, we were just looking the other way. Now we have identified the problem, we are getting the information out, and we are struggling, some countries more than others, to deal with it. We are also struggling. Don't think for a minute that the fight against corruption has been easy for the Panamanian government. It's a fight every day. We get up every day to face 5 newspapers that were purchased with corruption money, carry all kinds of stories on the government. It has been very hard. And we still have to see what will happen in our elections in 1.5 years. However, it's only one way forward. We understand. I wish you the best.
So, is this on? So just one question, maybe it'd be a good sort of an up note to end. I mean, as the IDEV program, we're delighted you talked about the multidimensional poverty index, and so few countries have gone that way. It really challenges the notion of looking poverty and inequality together. So what is Panama, given that you've really acknowledged this as an issue, what is Panama doing to address those issues of inequality in a growing economy?
We are very hopeful to what the poverty, multidimensional poverty index will show. We have launched just last year, upon the first round of information that came out, a zero poverty program on 10 districts. We chose the 10 districts that performed the worst with a multidimensional poverty index. And we have defined the program where we are investing on those districts with those metrics on all of the dimensions at the same time. We have geared towards those districts the efforts that we had already launched at the national level in terms of housing, water and sanitation, health, education. Of course, when you launch these programs, you don't work everywhere at the same time. You have limited resources. We have ensured with those 10 districts that we have devoted resources from all of our programs to those districts. So next year, I will be able to tell you what that shows. We began in Panama the work with cash transfer programs about 15 years ago. We are working hard under our administration to ensure that the recipients of the programs are those that really need it, because our certification was kind of weak. So we're trying just to work harder with data and information and define our public policies with that data and that information. Also, our government has, for the first time, assigned resources to municipalities. We're a very centralized government. Of course, we're a small country, but for the first time, we have decentralized resources. And this is also an experiment for Panama. You know, the first year that we decentralized the resources, we were faced with the reality of many municipalities not having the capacity even to formulate the projects. But it's a process, like everything. It's a process. The question is, what comes first, the capacity or the resources? Anyhow, we are doing many things in a different way that I am very certain that will show good results in terms of overcoming poverty and inequality. We have had good results in the past year, but more for poverty than for inequality. So maybe I'll let you know next year you can come over to Panama and see for yourself. Thank you so much once again for the opportunity.
So on behalf of the International Development Program and the Latin American Studies Program, as well as the students of SAIS, I would like to thank you so much, Vice President St. Malo, for presenting such an insightful talk and taking the time to answer our questions. I also want to thank the Panamanian Embassy and Franklin Morales for helping coordinate this event. We're very grateful for the opportunity. And thank you for operations, thank you to operations, the Dean's Office, and the IDEV program staff for helping organize this great event. This is a great start to our Development Roundtable Spring Series, and we will have another speaker next week. So I encourage you all to look at the lineup for this semester. It should be really great. If you are not signed up for the email listserv, there is a sign-up sheet at the back, and you can hear about future events. But let's just give one more round of applause and thank you for Vice President St. Malo.